Silk 106.9.
Joining me now then from 1874 Northwich is Matt Waters. Let's just test, Matt, that you can hear me.
Yeah, that's right. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Because obviously you won't know, but we're doing this on Zoom, so you'll be able to see the video through the week as well. I'll upload it on the Silk Sport blog, which is on www.silk1069.com. But Matt, we're doing a bit of a Silk Sport review, and there's been some strange results all the way through the football this season. But the one I want to get drawn onto today, we could talk about the Leeds and Chelsea because I think it's a great point for Marco Bielsa's men. But ultimately, Crystal Palace 1, West Bromwich Albion 0. Is that it? Is that curtains for Sam Allardyce's long residing tenure as one of the only managers never to be relegated?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it's been coming, I think, almost as soon as he took the job on at West Brom. I think their fate was almost sealed slightly before that. They never looked like that they would ever get going and kick on in the season so far this year. They've never once, to me, I mean, they've had patches in games where Diagno's coming up front. He's looked a handful. He was against us. He was against Man United. Today he was causing problems, but they never look like they're going to necessarily threaten you, West Brom. You know that they'll have chances. It's a Sam Allardyce team. I know firsthand as an Everton fan, when he manages you, you know you'll get a couple of chances in the game, but you're not going to play the best football. So for me, I think it's the ride on the wall for them. It has been for some time. You compare them to the other teams in the relegation zone. Obviously, Sheffield are gone, but looking at Fulham above them, Fulham are in a great run of form right now, and they're looking like that they could potentially even get out of that bottom three at some point, with other sides like Newcastle slipping up around them.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be a little bit silly to believe that Scott Parker can't get Fulham out. They seem to be flying at the moment. And obviously, you mentioned Sheffield United. It seems as though, I don't think there's been confirmation yet, but it seems as though Chris Wilder will leave Sheffield United after 5 years in charge. I believe it's more down to fallouts with the owners over the recruitment process. But for me, Chris Wilder's done a phenomenal job at Sheffield United.
Yeah, it's an absolute sensational story, isn't it, from where they were to the season that they had last year. I mean, if that is true over the recruitment, I kind of get it, because I think some of the signings have been strange. The money they threw at Ryan Brewster and Lys Mousset, I thought that they were two really bizarre signings. Obviously, Brewster coming from Liverpool and Mousset from Bournemouth. Neither of them have really got a pedigree of doing anything at any sort of level. And if you're going to be spending maybe 30 million, 35 million on them two combined, they aren't going to get you out of that bottom three. They aren't going to be players that are going to really be hitting it off and scoring at the end of the table. So it's a shame, I think, to see Chris Wilder leave, because I'd like to see him, have a year in the Championship next year and try and bring them back up, playing it more his way and doing his thing. But obviously, outside of the club matters, outside of the pitch matters, you can't do anything else about them as a manager. So you do, as footballing supporters, you see in the situation with Sheffield United, you have to sympathise with Wilder if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, when you look at the Championship itself, you've got some big results in there today. Watford, who got relegated last season, late winner against Cardiff. Mick McCarthy's 1,000th game in charge. It's a phenomenal record for Mick McCarthy. But what about Bournemouth? Bournemouth taking on Barnsley this afternoon, losing 3-2. Jonathan Woodgate, since he's been given the job on a semi-permanent basis till the end of the season, is Chris Wilder a shout for the Bournemouth job next year?
Well, potentially. I mean, you wouldn't be too strange to see Eddie Howe end up back at Bournemouth. It's one of these things. I don't know what the task is at Bournemouth at hand there, because they've got some good players clearly at Championship level. But I don't think, as we saw in the last season at Premier League level, you see Dom Solanke, he's scoring goals in the Championship for them. He's just come back from injury. But when he was in the Premier League, he's at Liverpool and then Bournemouth, he never really managed to cut it. And obviously they lost some players. So I feel like that task at Bournemouth is difficult. But what I will say, what a job that Barnsley are doing at the moment. They're on absolute fire. They're unbeaten in their last 11 games. I know our co-manager Wain Goodison will be pleased for me saying that, obviously being a former Barnsley player. But they're in fantastic form. So it's a must-win game for Bournemouth, that really, today. They did retake the lead against Barnsley, but they're in a bit of a mess, and they need to start pulling some wins together now. They're going to miss out on the playoffs.
Yeah, and talking of Barnsley, do you know what I mean? They've been fighting off relegation for year after year after year, and this season they now found themselves in sixth position, 5 points clear of Bournemouth now in seventh, and pushing for a promotion on current form. Surely they've got to be one of the favourites to be in that playoff battle come the end of the season.
I mean, you'd be really surprised if they didn't make it. I mean, I'll just look before their next two games are Wycombe and Sheffield Wednesday, and if you're going to be getting 6 points, they're two teams that you're going to do it on, and that run extends to 13 unbeaten in the league. The last time I think the loss was to Chelsea in the FA Cup. So that shows the level and the performances that they're putting in consistently. And if you keep those runs going, they've got Reading, I think, after that in a few games, who are a little bit out of sorts in the moment, hit and miss. So there's no reason why they can't make it into the playoffs. And I think on current form, they are the form side in the Championship right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think talking of managers and milestones, you look, as I say, at Mick McCarthy. I think it's his first defeat today as Cardiff manager. Didn't really go very well for him in Cyprus with Apostol Nicosia, sacked after about 8 games, I think. But 1,000 games in management. Another manager who's come into a new side and doing remarkable is Nigel Pearson at Bristol City. He's gone from Leicester, he was at Hull, and for some reason, he seems to be one of those managers that around the Championship and League One, he always gets the side to perform.
Yeah, I think there's several managers like Nigel Pearson who can do that. They can just manage to get a team together. I think Neil Warnock, he's another sort of example of that. He can just build a team, get them together, get them playing in a way. The players seem to take to him. Obviously, he had the incident at Watford where he then left, but he seems to be able to galvanise a team, get them believing in the style of play. Obviously, today beating Birmingham, which is a game that you'd maybe expect them to win. Birmingham have been picking up a few results here and there, but not wholesale changes. And Bristol, again, their form was terrible before Nigel took over, so it's been a marked improvement for them for sure.
Yeah, and then you look at Sky Bet League One. Charlton Athletic for me are one of the sides that I thought would have been a bit high. All right, they're in 8th position at the moment. They're only 2 points outside the playoffs, but it doesn't seem to be going very well for Lee Bowyer. Lincoln City dropping points today as well, down into 3rd place. But Hull City flying at the top of Sky Bet League One.
Yeah, and having a great year. And again, it's one of those teams you mentioned there, Charlton, but you'd really be expecting Hull to be in the top 3 places. As for me, you mentioned it there. Lincoln losing to Rochdale today was my standout result of the day. Rochdale haven't won a game in 9 until today, beating Lincoln. That's now their 3rd loss in 5 games. So you're looking at that thinking, well, Lincoln are in a spot of trouble, and if they want to be keeping that pack towards the top, putting pressure onto Hull, you've got to be beating a side like Rochdale. And if Rochdale can then maybe pick up another few points here and there, they're only 2 points off outside the relegation zone. So League One, I think, is probably the most competitive league so far this season. It's not done and dusted at either end of the table so far.
Yeah, they always talk about the Championship being the big league in Europe when it comes to competitiveness and never being sure what's going to happen. But as you say, I think Sky Bet League One this season looks like it. The standout game for me today is Burton Albion's game against Crewe Alexandra. Crewe going into this game, I would have expected Dave Artell's men to pick up points. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank and I think Dino Marmaria working absolute wonders with the Brewers, and a 3-0 victory this afternoon, probably against the form table.
Yeah, completely. I mean, Burton have been playing fantastic football recently. They really are picking up funny. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank's done a fantastic job. He did the first time, obviously. I know it's from the days when I used to support Vix. Dino Marmaria knows how to get a side together and knows how to pull it together. So it's no surprise to see that combination working well. And ultimately, I think, again, Crewe, they've been playing some good football recently. Obviously, they lost a few players in January, moving up the league into the Championship. I think a couple went to Blackburn, and I think one went to Preston. So again, they've had a little bit of disruption, but they've had a really good season their first year back in League One. So Burton, again, really interesting one. The amount of results they've put together has been astounding from seemingly staring down relegation.
Yeah, and I think if we move finally then to League Two, obviously the early signs were that the shock was going to come at Oldham. Keith Curle's just taken over from Harry Kewell at Oldham, 2-0 up against Cambridge United, 2nd position in the league, turned around, Cambridge winning 4-2. But that for me was not the surprise result, but I wasn't expecting it to go that way 15 minutes in. But again, a special mention in League Two for the Gloucester-based sides, because Forest Green and Cheltenham are always in and around the playoffs, but never seem to go that one step further. Is this the year that the vegan side Forest Green actually get out of Sky Bet League Two?
I hope not, but but I
Yeah,
could.
how you see it.
But the thing is with Forest Green, it's one of those clubs. It's all just one big massive gimmick, really. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think Cheltenham. Speaking to them, I think they've been fantastic this season.
Yeah.
Really been pulling results together. Ran Man City quite close towards the end. Obviously, a little bit of quality in the last 10 minutes from them in the RFA Cup game. So it's no surprise to see them there. They've been putting in consistent performances throughout the season, and they're now getting results now against some of the big teams when it matters. And ultimately, if you're going to get promoted out of League Two, you've got to get results against some of those big sides. Otherwise, you're going to fall away slightly. And again, you see it for years and years. I can't remember who it was last year, but if you're getting on a good run going into the playoffs, you're looking like you're going to get promoted one way or another. Even if it goes into the playoffs, you still carry that momentum forward. But I think for Cheltenham, I certainly think that they'll be able to do it within the top three for Forest Green. I think they'll be certainly one of the sides in the playoffs, and if they continue their run going, who knows what they can do.
Yeah, and obviously we've got the Papa John's Trophy this afternoon. Portsmouth taking on Salford City, and as nice as it is for Salford to be at Wembley again, they've got to be looking. Richie Wheelings has got to be looking at getting Salford promoted this season, surely.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about Salford a few weeks ago, and again, I think we were both a little bit surprised and maybe underwhelmed by how they've been playing. Obviously, for the
Yeah,
backing that they've got, and I mean, you've got the class of '92 there, but they've also got more money behind them. So for me, it's a surprise to almost see the way that they are performing. And one thing they've never done, I don't think, is employ a real good manager who's experienced. Obviously, like Graham Alexander, they had the two now at Chester before that. So Richie Wellens has got a real task on his hands there, I think, to start getting Salford some results. Obviously, if they did win today, I'm not too sure. Was it 0-0
yeah,
in that
still
game
0-0 at the
still?
moment as well.
It's
They're in
still.
extra time, but
Yeah,
I
so
think
that's a good result there. Even then, taking a team in the league above, albeit Portsmouth got battered last week by Northampton, it's still taking them further forward. So if they can get some form going towards the end of the season, like, that's the type of team I mean. If they can get form going towards the end of the season, I don't expect them to be in the top three, but if they can get results going, there's no reason why they can't get promoted through the playoffs.
no, absolutely. And I think, like you say, the main surprise to me with Salford is that with the class of 92 behind them, why has a bigger name not been put in charge? And I don't mean a bigger name as in Nicky Butt or Paul Scholes, for example, but somebody who's been around League Two and actually done it, got promoted. Keith Curle would have been a big shout for me. He would have been a manager that's been in League Two. He's played at a high level. He's obviously played for England. He would have been a great one. But talking of managers that have done great things, I just want to quickly touch on the Scottish Premiership. Rangers becoming the new Premiership champions. Stephen Gerrard in his first, I suppose, proper manager's job. He was the under-18s manager at Liverpool for some time, but he's done a great job, hasn't he? And we're starting to see players like Stephen Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Wayne Rooney, albeit it's not having the best of times at the moment at Derby. They seem to have a bad vein of form. But for ourselves, particularly you being, we'll go with a little bit younger than me. We'll leave it at that bit. We're seeing players that we've always watched on the telly going into management and doing decent jobs. And I'm sure Frank Lampard will be another one that will return very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gerrard's done an outstanding job at Rangers this season, albeit for all of Celtic's flaws that they've had this year, because it hasn't been the most competitive of seasons. But what they've done is, despite that, they've always been there or thereabouts, just winning games. They know how to win games. They've performed well in Europe. The one thing you could slightly criticise them on is maybe having a little bit of a leaky defence here and there, especially in Europe. But outside of that, they've been phenomenal. They've got players who can score. They've used their own system. Well, Ryan Kent, I think, has been outstanding for them from when I've seen them bits in
Definitely.
Europe. Morella's up front for when he's not suspended. He's playing. He
Yeah.
plays fantastic. He plays fantastic. So I think it's good. Again, obviously, taking my Everton hat off 1 second, it's seeing another English manager coming through and somebody there who's built a winning mentality and got a winning team. And I think it's only a matter of time, maybe in the next few years, before he does take on that Liverpool job.
Absolutely. And I think he was in an interview just after winning the league, and he was saying that Liverpool fans want Jurgen Klopp, they don't want Steven Gerrard. But ultimately, Jurgen Klopp will finish his contract at some point. And for me, Steven Gerrard is the answer. It's a young English manager. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Eddie Howe take the Celtic job for next season. But just finally then, Matt, before I let you go and enjoy your Saturday evening in, because we're still a couple of weeks away from a Saturday evening out. Obviously, we had great news about the FA Vars. The game's going ahead. Congleton Town will be in action on the 17th of April, taking on Malvern Town. And I know that obviously from an 1874 perspective, doesn't really make much changes. But how are plans going with regards to the start of next season? And obviously, Wayne and Paul getting the side ready for another assault, whichever league it is they're in.
Yeah, so I mean, I spoke to Wayne last weekend, and I think we were both sort of. To be fair, it surprised me. He sort of tuned out of everything that was going on around in terms of the restructure. Just wasn't necessarily interested. It's not necessarily something that's on his mind at all. You're focusing whatever season you're on. They're just planning dates when they're going to return to training, which I think is the 17th of April, if I'm right in thinking. They're going to just return to training, do some light things, five-a-side, make it enjoyable for them, make it fun, a bit lighter, rather than doing any sort of like fixtures. Obviously, there's the tournament that Prestwich organised that they've got going on. I don't know whether that'll happen now because I assume it'll be behind closed doors. So it's just a bit of keeping it light, making it enjoyable for the players so they can ease themselves back in. So, a couple of players are going over to play for some Cheshire League sides just so they can then get themselves some fitness if they want to. And ultimately it lets them enjoy football again, and they can do a bit of it to clear their heads, play with their friends before actually coming back into our season. We start pre-season on the 15th of June to then get ourselves ready to hopefully put in another promotion challenge should we be in the North West Counties.
Absolutely. Matt Wars from 1874 Northwich, thanks very much for joining me this afternoon on Silk Sport.